This is a film about how all of us are being tricked by Donald Trump. It's about his reasons for doing this and why it is the greatest prank in human history. Donald Trump is pranking the Republican Party. And it's going better than he could have imagined. He is winning. Donald Trump was a registered Democrat from 2001 through 2009, and was probably a registered Democrat up to the age of 41. Hillary and Bill Clinton attended his wedding to his current wife in 2005. He is an advocate of single-payer health care.
As far as single-payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland.
He is pro-choice.
I hate the concept of abortion.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I am pro-choice in every respect.
I think Bush is probably the worst president in the history of the United States, and I just don't understand how they could have lost that election.
Up until 2010, his own political campaign contributions heavily favored Democrats.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat. And it just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
Donald Trump has tried this prank before, in 2000 as a Reform Party candidate. But he failed trying to be a conservative candidate, vote spoiler for that election against George W. Bush. Now, in the year 2016, Trump is currently succeeding in performing a devastating critique on the Republican Party, and he is doing it to their faces. Just imagine the shame that these people will feel when he reveals this is all a big prank. They voted for a fascist prick, and they did it willingly. But where did it all go wrong for the Republican Party? Why are so many supporting Donald Trump this time? Once upon a time, conservatives served a useful purpose in American politics. A conservative is a bulwark against diminishing returns. They point out inefficiencies and hold back grand ideas with the factual realities of the situation. Conservatives are a necessary voice to understand when a government cannot afford to do something, or to point out when central planning is a mistake and it should be left to the private sector. But when Ronald Reagan was elected, from the beginning, he marketed a simple idea.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
This was a huge shift in political ideology. This simple idea won Reagan the election. Like conservatives before him, and like his vice president, he would still work with Democrats and compromise in order to pass legislation. I'd learned while negotiating union contracts that you seldom got everything you asked for, and I agreed with FDR, who said in 1933, "I have no expectations of making a hit every time I come to bat. What I seek is the highest possible batting average. If you got 75 or 80% of what you were asking for, I say you take it and fight for the rest later." And that's what I told these radical conservatives who never got used to it. But it was the radical conservatives who won.
Grover Norquist said that he wants to shrink government to the size where it could be drowned in a bathtub.
You want to drown it in the bathtub?
No, we want it down to the size, to where it would fit in the bathtub.
A generation of Republicans since preach blanket distrust of anything the government does.
I have little interest in streamlining government or in making it more efficient, for I mean to reduce its size.
And then it got even worse. In the late 90s, the neoconservatives rose to power in America. Dick Cheney, Karl Rove, Grover Norquist, and the son of Ronald Reagan's vice president were all uncompromising, anti-government zealots. In 2000, the polls showed that the popular vote was in favor of a Republican nominee, and Donald Trump saw that electing this headstrong neoconservative would be very bad for the country, and indeed, the world. So he thought he could do something about it. Trump was a great figurehead to conservatives, and if he could pull enough votes for himself, it would prevent a Bush presidency. In 2000, Trump would try and act as a vote spoiler. So what is vote spoiling? A simple example is this.
Let's say we have a two-person race between a giant douche and a turd sandwich. In the general election, between only these two candidates, the giant douche would get 60% of the vote, and the turd sandwich would get 40%, winning the election for the giant douche. But let's say a stupid dick enters the race. The stupid dick splits the votes of the giant douche. Now, with 30% each, the turd sandwich wins the election by 10%.
But in 2000, neither Trump nor the eventual Reform Party candidate, Pat Buchanan, ended up being the vote spoiler. Instead, the election was spoiled by Ralph Nader. Even with the popular vote, Al Gore lost the Electoral College, and Bush was promoted to the presidency. The Bush presidency has the record for most vacation days of any modern presidency. Bush started warrantless wiretapping of millions, racked up a massive debt, brought on by $1 trillion tax cut for the rich. Because of this, wages actually shrunk for the middle class. Then, the housing and banking collapse of 2007 caused the Great Recession and nearly collapsed the entire economy. The Bush administration ignored warnings about an attack Osama bin Laden was planning in the United States.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
They ruined world credibility and goodwill after 9/11 by falsifying evidence of WMDs, launching an elective war in Iraq, inadequately equipping soldiers, botching the occupation. This caused a huge spike in oil prices because of Middle East instability, then declared mission accomplished. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have a price tag of $6 trillion and would see the United States government legally sanction the use of torture for the first time in its military history. This led to the total fuck-ups that are Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay. And that does not even touch the Bush administration's domestic policies, like abstinence-only education, which increased teen pregnancy, purposeful disenfranchisement of voters, and a fuck-the-poor policy in New Orleans. And while all of this was happening, the one person who could have prevented it was Donald Trump. During this dark time, he must have blamed himself. If he only could have done more, acted as a bigger spoiler, he could have prevented all of the disastrous decisions of the Bush administration.
The worst president in the history of the United States.
Donald Trump is pranking the Republican Party because they deserve it. And it's going better than he could have imagined. He is winning. His first intentions were to act as another spoiler, probably to run as an independent against the eventual Republican candidate, perhaps Bush, Rubio, or Cruz. Now that he is winning, not only does Trump seem to be a spoiler in this election, if we are lucky, the Republican Party could destroy themselves trying to destroy him. Simply put, Donald Trump is trying to drive voters away from the Republican Party by exposing those who are destructive and ignorant enough to vote for him. They all will be brought down to the valley into the land called Armageddon, while reasonable people consider this a last straw and flee in shame. When once the conservatives acted as a positive force for reform against the specter of diminishing returns, Donald Trump is now the physical embodiment of what the Republican Party has become: an angry, emotional, desperate for power, pompous, pro-rich, arrogant, completely anti-government, superiority-obsessed clown.
We're talking about our very existence, so no, we're not going to chill. In fact, it's time to drill, baby, drill down and hold these folks accountable.
In 1963, Southern racist dipshit Bull Connor used fire hoses and attack dogs on peaceful protesters and children during the civil rights protests in Birmingham, Alabama. President John Kennedy later said the civil rights movement should thank God for Bull Connor. He helped it as much as Abraham Lincoln. What President Kennedy alludes to is that the cartoonish villain, Bull Connor, was a catalyst for the civil rights era. Television allowed people to see how he clearly mistreated blacks. Bull Connor set an example of how not to act, how not to behave. Bull Connor, through his contemptible behavior, swayed millions of Americans away from his world view.
Does any of this sound familiar?
And I'll add one additional thing. I watched the Republican debate last night, and I'll tell you what, if the right person was debating against whoever the winner of that group is, they'd have a major impact on the election.
Donald Trump is not who everyone thinks he is. This is the central point of my theory. This is the opening theme to Netflix's series House of Cards. It tells the story of a very tight conspiracy that affects the world on a massive scale. Who knew real life could be even more interesting? So let's start building the argument that Donald Trump is trolling the Republican Party. And if you will indulge me, there is no better way to make an argument like this on YouTube than a list. So let's go. Number 10. Will he run? From the very beginning, people have been asking Donald Trump if he will ever run for president. Let's start back, as early as we can. Trump had inherited his father's real estate company, and unlike many family dynasties, he would do his job way better than his parent. From the beginning, Trump wanted to self-promote as a way of cultivating business. Trump's first big business deal was converting a bankrupt railroad yard in Manhattan to a convention center, winning the contract over 2 other sites. On this, his first big deal, he offered to forgo fees in order to name the convention center after his family. New York City turned him down. This, and the Commodore Hotel's renovation into the Grand Hyatt Hotel, made him a famous commercial real estate developer in New York. At this point, he was only famous in New York. He then married Olympian and fashion model Ivana Zelznikova. They would have a daughter, Ivanka Trump. This and the building of the lavish or gaudy, depending upon your taste in architecture, Trump Tower and the Trump Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City would make him famous around the country. Trump was the perfect rich guy foil. He lavished his wealth down to the gold-plated sinks in his private plane. The American public would mock him while they would listen to his advice. Just listen to how his business advice garners a respectful ear.
What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share.
That interview was in 1988 on Oprah Winfrey's old talk show. You can tell by the old square format, and Oprah has really poofy hair and asks questions from the audience like she's fucking Ricky Lake. She was the first to have Donald Trump on a national forum. So if there was one person you want to blame for discovering him, blame Oprah.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not, but I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't.
On that show, she becomes yet another person to ask.
You've said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone in to lose in my life.
From the beginning, people have been asking Trump if he was going to run for president, and they always assumed he would run as a Republican.
But you might be classified as an Eastern Republican. Fair?
Well, I guess you could say that, yes.
Number 9. Trump is winning because he's a salesman, not a statesman. Trump has a signature bravado and sentence structure that makes him a perfect salesman. So why use that talent in politics? Trump doesn't speak like a politician. Now, we have heard that sentiment before about other politicians, but it has never really been that true until him. First of all, he curses.
Because we have nobody in Washington that sits back and said, you're not going to raise that fucking price. You understand? Listen, you motherfuckers. We'll get you. Now, you said the same exact thing. You said the same exact thing, but it's a different message.
The important thing to observe here is the reaction to these type of statements. He would just get standing ovations just for saying the word fuck. Professional politicians watch what they say so they don't receive backlash from those statements. Trump never internally questions the offensive things that he says.
Who is the man that said that? I have to reprimand. How dare you? Okay, have I Okay, I've reprimanded him. Where is she? I didn't hear that. That's terrible. Terrible. Doing that to brag, because you know what? I don't have to brag. I don't have to, believe it or not. I think I am a nice person. People that know me like, I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second. I'm not saying they're stupid. I like China. I just sold an apartment for $15 million to somebody from China.
I think you'd have riots.
His stupidity is refreshing to the stupid. Now, there are two possibilities as to why he is on this path. He is either truly stupid or something else much more interesting is happening. Number 8, the two possible Trumps. The overt story is that Trump has fallen more and more in love with his own bullshit. This same psychology can explain bloviating shitheads like Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh, Ann Coulter, Michelle Malkin, and Tom Likas, and, of course, the piano key necktie. Toxic people who think the disgusted response to their repulsive and obnoxious awfulness is somehow a good sign, a sign of catharsis. They are idiots in smart people clothing. The opposite is my theory. Donald Trump is a smart person in idiot clothing.
All that on the next Colbert Report tonight.
We have already seen this before with Stephen Colbert during the Colbert Report.
Because Donald Trump is like, I'm not the first person to say this, but I completely agree that he's my old character with $10 billion.
It's not a surprise that Stephen Colbert was playing a character. Listen to how the real Stephen describes his character.
Colbert once said of his character, I think of him as a well-intentioned, poorly informed, high-status idiot.
For 8 years, Colbert trolled the Republican Party while wearing Republican face. He did this because they deserved it. Trump has just continued the tradition. Number 7. Trump didn't start saying controversial or dumb things until very recently. Trump has fake run for president every election cycle since 1980. This is him in 1980.
Would you like to be the president of the United States?
I really don't believe I would run it, but I would like to see somebody as the president who could do the job, and there are very capable people in this country.
In 88.
Supposing Bush called you and said, Donald, forget this business thing. Come run.
Forget about it. I just like that introduction.
2000.
Well, it says that I am joining as of Monday the Reform Party, which in New York is the Independence Party, and I look forward to doing so.
This is him in 2004, and in 2008, and 2012. This is a clever move. Running for president increases his media presence and fame permanently. Each time he would seem relevant and important, then drop out at the last possible moment. Now, something strange happened in 2008. If the overt narrative is true, he becomes part of the army who is upset at Obama for existing.
Kenya, wasn't he?
You think he was born in Kenya?
I believe so.
You don't think he was born in the United States?
I don't.
Why?
I don't, because he won't produce the original birth certificate.
It's actually been produced, though.
You know he has.
Have you seen it?
No, he hasn't produced it.
Do you think Barack was born in the United States?
No, I do not.
Why?
Why do you think he was?
Because I've seen his birth certificate.
Oh, the hell you have. Nobody's seen his birth certificate.
If you think this theory has merit, then at this time Trump would start to heavily troll the Tea Party by taking up their stupidest point, acting as their spokesman, and giving people a figure to codify their logical arguments against. This is when he started to go all in with trolling the dumb people. And he did it with their dumbest issue.
I grew up with Wall Street geniuses, what they do in terms of fraud and how they change documents. And I'll tell you something, if you notice, those dates were 3 days later. And here's what I ask people. Who puts announcements? Here are two poor people, a man and a woman with no money. They have a baby. There's announcements in the newspaper.
The grandparents did it.
The grandparents. Nelson Rockefeller doesn't put announcements.
Sure, there are birth announcements all the time.
I've never seen one.
Really?
No, I've never seen
common.
one. I've never seen one.
Well, why is this important to you?
Because if you are going to be the president of the United States, you have to be born in this country. And there is a doubt as to whether or not he was born.
Do you really feel there's a doubt?
You know, I started
this
off by
is Donald
saying,
Trump publicly mocking the Tea Party to their face. He did this right after the 2008 election. An election that brought us George W. Bush 2.0 in Sarah Palin. Somehow an even more ignorant, less qualified, more headstrong, more sure of herself, more incompetent, more wackadoodle dipshit had come along to further hijack the Republican Party.
When we're talking about a nation without borders, when we're talking about bankruptcies in our federal government, debt that our children and our grandchildren, they'll never be able to pay off. When we're talking about no more Reagan-esque power that comes from strength, power through strength, well, then we're talking about our very existence. So no, we're not going to chill. In fact, it's time to drill, baby, drill down and hold these folks accountable.
Also, at this time, the Tea Party emerged to basically disagree with anything Obama said or did.
His church was based on racism.
God will take care of health care. God will take care.
Radical communist and socialist. Somebody ought to investigate that like Glenn Beck has been doing. I'm telling you right now, this whole Obama administration is unconstitutional.
This was the time period when shit just got made up because they wanted it to be true. And the truthiness hasn't stopped. In 2009, 28% of Republicans believed Obama was not born in the United States. Another 20% of Republicans were not sure. This is a very good litmus test as to whether you are an incontrovertible asshole. This is based off of no evidence at all other than using the racist logic line of premise. Obama is black. Therefore, Obama is not white. Premise. Only white people seem like true Americans to me. Conclusion. Obama must not be American. How else can you justify it? This simple litmus test of assholeness is a good way to dismiss any other political statement you might make. Because you are a birther.
He doesn't have a birth certificate.
Because you are a birther, there is a high likelihood that you will be very wrong about every piece of garbage that comes out of your mouth. This is why Trump inaugurated his first dive into satirical political theater with this subject. Because anyone who believed it was truly contemptible. Number 6, Trump's political affiliations. People have always assumed Trump is a Republican. And after hearing this refrain enough, he could have just started letting people believe what they wanted to believe. Until 1999. In 1999, shortly after the death of his father, in June of 1999, Trump ran for a presidential primary for the first time, announcing his first presidential exploratory committee in October of 1999. He sought the candidacy of the Reform Party, a third political party started by Ross Perot. The Reform Party candidate ended up being ultra-right-wing conservative Pat Buchanan, who Trump called a Hitler lover. Trump also said of Buchanan, he doesn't like the blacks. He doesn't like the gays. It's just incredible that anyone could embrace this guy. Do you see here how Trump, at this point, is establishing a contempt for conservatives? At this point, he is asked whether he is still a Republican.
I really believe the Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, just what's going on is just nuts.
That year, he would register as an independent, never having stated that he would be leaving the Republican Party, merely stating that the Republicans
are just too crazy right.
And why are you a Republican?
I have no idea. I mean, I am a Republican because I just believe in certain principles of the Republican Party.
Does that sound like a person whose heart is fully into supporting the Republican Party? Or is it someone beginning to play the game?
But you are what might be classified as an Eastern Republican. Fair?
Well, I guess you could say that, yes.
Which means kind of a Rockefeller, Chase Manhattan Republican?
I never thought of it in those terms.
He is even asked if he is a Bush Republican, and he wouldn't agree to it.
Are you a Bush Republican?
No, I think I'm really, the people that I do best with are the people that drive the taxis. You know, wealthy people don't like me because I'm competing against them all the time, and they don't like me, and I like to win.
As we just said, 10 years later, he would leave the Republican Party. 8 years after that, he would be so infuriated that he would call for the impeachment of George W. Bush.
It just seemed like she was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Impeaching him?
To me, this seems like Trump is a guy who is calling himself a Republican simply because that is what people expect of a wealthy land baron. He says he is only a Republican
because I just believe in certain principles of the Republican Party.
Number 5. In fact, Trump has shown more overt support for Democrats than Republicans.
Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've known her for years. I just like her. I like her, and I like her husband. I'm very pro-choice. I think Bush is probably the worst president in the history of the United States. I would tax people of wealth, of great wealth, liberal on health care.
Now, this list is getting really juicy at this point. It only gets better. If this theory is true, it began in 1988, accidentally. Trump released The Art of the Deal that year. It's still his best-selling book as an author. It's a fantastic book, by the way. It's actually a great insight on negotiation. With his book coming out the same year of the election, he found a good spot to get some attention. He was being invited to speak at Republican events by Republican strategist Mike Dunbar. This is free advertising for his book release, which certainly increases book sales. All he had to do was change his registration from Democrat to Republican. Yes, Donald Trump was a Democrat until 1988. Now, some could argue that he was young, and we are all Democrats when we're young, because we are all compassionate when we are young, and apparently you stop having empathy past being a teenager. But that argument is for high school or college students, perhaps. Not 41 years old, which is how old Donald Trump was in 1988.
Well, then why are you a Republican?
I have no idea.
This, to me, reveals his core nature.
Well, then why are you a Republican?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I have no idea.
It is his truth. And if you don't think that officially being registered as a Democrat once isn't convincing, how about twice? We already mentioned that he dumped the Republican Party to register as independent in 1999. But 2 years later, Donald Trump would re-register as a Democrat. Trump would be a Democrat until 2009, when he registered again as a Republican.
For one thing, I really believe the Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, just what's going on is just nuts.
2 years later, in 2011, he left the Republican Party again, registering as unaffiliated. Then 4 months later, he registered again as Republican. His donations also tell a story of more support for Democrats until very recently.
He initially, for a long time, he gave more to Democrats than to Republicans. Over the years, he had added up money to Hillary Clinton and Harry Reid and Charles Rangel and to John Kerry and the like, almost to $600,000 worth. Then in 2011, he shifted more money over to the Republican side. They caught up and then surpassed that number with donations over the years, people like Bob Dole and Phil Gramm and John McCain and Rudy Giuliani, so close to $1 million there.
Number 4, his absolute ridicule of Republicans.
You ever see a sign that says Jeb Bush or Bush? Now, there's a reason he doesn't use his name, because we had a lot of problems with that last name.
First of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. He's number 11.
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there.
Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump.
The fact is, Donald, you cannot take
more energy tonight. I like that. And the poll just came out, and I'm tied with Jeb Bush. And I said, oh, that's too bad. How can I be tied with this guy? He's terrible. He's terrible. You hear our politicians, John McCain, 2 days, oh, Benghazi, you don't hear about it anymore. They said to Marco Rubio, are you having fun? He's sweating like a pig. I don't think you heard me. You're having a hard time tonight. But when the folks of Iowa found out the true facts of the job that you've done in Wisconsin, all of a sudden you tubed. He was number 1, now he's number 6 or 7 in the poll. So Jeb Bush, let's say he's president. Ay. And then the next day, he'll be called by special interests that supported him, his lobbyists who push him around like a piece of candy.
It took him 5 days to give a proper answer on Iraq.
There was a moment when Trump was hosting Saturday Night Live, when Taran Killam arguably mocked Trump while standing next to him. Now look how Trump is acting when he is standing next to Sarah Palin. This is Sarah Palin going full idiot.
Teachers and Teamsters and cops and cooks, you rock and rollers and holy rollers.
When Trump stands behind Sarah Palin, he doesn't nod firmly. He doesn't clap. He has this coy half smile. It's almost hiding disgust. Number 3, his parody of Republican ideology. At this point, he's very used to talking to Republicans. He's very used to knowing what they cheer for. He basically says the worst thing that come to his mind. Stuff like this.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
I will build a better wall, and I'll build it for cheaper, and Mexico will pay.
A lot of people do not think it was an authentic certificate.
I said, no, I'll use the word anchor baby. Excuse me. I'll use the word anchor baby.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you. Do you agree with that? He's a war hero because he was captured.
You see, there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
You got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. Total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
So if the theory is correct, this is the most important part of him trolling the Republican Party. Look how easy it is to say terrible things.
Suck my dick. I want your heart. I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
I am Shakespeare in the flesh, Walt Disney.
Not at all.
You think it's good to slap a woman?
No, I don't think it's good.
You don't think it's bad?
I don't think it's that bad. I think that it depends entirely on the circumstances and if it merits.
Honestly, I think we should just trust our president in every decision that he makes, and we should just support that.
So when Donald Trump goes the easy and evil route by blaming immigrants, for example, he does this as a way to mock those that blame immigrants.
We need to seal our borders, but not just the southern border, but the northern border, the Pacific border, the Atlantic border, every border there is.
We need to have a system that tracks you from the moment you come in, and then when your time is up, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, however long your visa is, then we go get you.
Immigration without assimilation is an invasion.
When he says Muslims should be banned, he's actually mocking those that blame Muslims.
I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
Members of Congress who are claiming that Muslim extremists have infiltrated the highest levels of the U.S. government, even maybe working side by side with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The evidence they point to, however, well, it's questionable at best. Representative Michelle Bachmann and 4 of her Republican colleagues in Congress are calling for an investigation because of what she terms the possible deep penetration, her words, of Muslim extremists into the U.S. government.
When he advocates bombing the hell out of people, he is mocking those that do the same.
Bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb.
We will carpet bomb them into oblivion. I don't know if sand can glow in the dark, but we're going to find out.
Agrabah, as Disney fans may know, is the fictional home of Aladdin, and according to the PPP poll, an average of 30% of Republicans in the poll would like to bomb it. Not surprisingly, that figure spiked the highest among Donald Trump's supporters.
When he talks about how terrible the Iran deal is, even though he knows nothing about it, that is him mocking Republicans who do the same thing.
This deal doesn't dismantle one centrifuge. It doesn't close one site.
No one trusts Iran.
I don't trust the leadership of Iran.
There should have been a clear recognition on their part that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state.
I wouldn't have started these negotiations to begin with.
So when he says something like this,
he's a very divisive person, which is why he brings this kind of stuff up. And he should have devoted more time to working on a good nuclear deal with Iran instead of what he's doing, because he has just been a disaster for our country.
This is him imitating and mocking Sarah Palin.
This is the redneck version of a whiteboard. And on this lists the scandals that are destroying America, Greta.
No evidence, just truthiness.
Truthiness is anyone can read the news to you. I promise to feel the news at you.
Gut feeling that you want to be true. Number 2, Trump can't help but have principled stands on many liberal issues.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford private. But
universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
I hate the concept of abortion.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I am pro-choice in every respect.
I hate the concept of guns. I'm not in favor of...
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat. And it just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
We have totally incompetent people. Now, some people say they're bad people. I don't think they're that smart to be bad people. I just think, honestly, I mean, a lot of people get angry when I say, I don't think they're bad. I think they're stupid. I think they're incompetent.
All of these things explain how Trump seems to have contradictory points of view. The man is simply lying so much that he can't be consistent.
Back when this happened, Trump confessed to the whole thing.
Soon after the interview, Trump admitted that he was John Miller and called it a joke gone awry.
Okay, so there's no story here then, is there? All present-day Trump needed to do was quickly reconfirm that it was him.
I guess the simple question this morning, are you aware of the tape? Is it you?
No, I don't think it, I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time, and it doesn't sound like my voice at all.
And the number one reason is how negatively this affects his business prospects.
Well, call it another Trump dump. Macy's is now cutting ties with Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump.
Univision says it's dropping out of the Miss USA pageant and cutting business ties with Donald Trump over comments he made about Mexican immigrants.
I know you're suing Univision for $500 million. What about NBC? They've parted ways with you. Are you going to sue NBC?
In light of the recent statements made by the presidential candidate in the U.S. media, we have suspended sale of all products from the Trump home decor range.
This never would have happened had he not run for president, for real. The loss of his business prospects were from a direct effect of his recent idiot speak. The only way to get back favor and reputation is expose yourself as having never believed this crap at all. So let's talk about the most important aspect of this number one reason. His daughter. This is a conspiracy. And conspiracies are very, very hard to cover up. If, say, more than 3 people know about it, it almost always gets exposed. He wouldn't have trusted anyone with the knowledge of this conspiracy other than maybe 3 or 4 family members. How do we know this? He said it himself.
I tend not to confide. I really tend not to confide. I'm very closed in that sense. Now, I think that's my own, maybe, guarded mechanism.
So who has he told? His wife? His sons? His daughter? Perhaps that's it. They share the burden of the truth. Ivanka Trump is like her father, in that she is better at business than her father. Her intelligence is crazy high. Her acumen and her ability is so obvious. And it's also completely antithetical to the behavior of her father. Yet this woman, a good friend of Chelsea Clinton, has raised no objection or even any slight doubt that Trump's dumb ideas could need a moment of rethinking. She has appeared with him on many occasions during the campaign. She is there when Trump is being assaulted, and she has not batted an eye. My theory proposes that she could only behave this way if she knew that her father was faking it for a grander purpose. If you still don't believe this could be true, just imagine yourself as Donald Trump. You're a billionaire, now with nothing to lose. You have just seen a relentless and reckless attack on Obama over fucking nothing.
Why do you continue to support a Nazi policy, as Obama has expressly supported this policy? Why are you supporting it?
It is a tribute to the First Amendment that this kind of vile, contemptible nonsense is so freely propagated. Ma'am, trying to have a conversation with you would be like trying to argue with a dining room table. I have no interest in doing it.
This is codified in the ignorant appeal of Sarah Palin, who has just destroyed the credibility of a well-respected Republican and decent human being John McCain. The despicable fight over health care exposed a huge population of Tea Party fuckwits. So you make a decision. Next time you won't fake a run for president. You will go all in to guarantee the win for a Democrat and to soil and further destroy the Republican Party. This time, you will make a huge impact by going full moron. You start the dumb fuckery by becoming the spokesman for the stupidest of all topics, the birther movement. It works tremendously well and positions you right into the place where you want, as the trusted spokesman for the group you are going to troll. You run for president and you become king of the trolls. It is the greatest prank in human history that Donald Trump is conducting right now. Now every decent person looks upon your ideology and cringes. They cringe the same way that people cringe at the behavior of Bull Connor. Think of the anguish Donald Trump must feel when he goes home at night. Few people that share the pain with you. The despicable mask you have to wear every day. Every day, speaking to supporters who want to vote for a bloviating, racist, sexist, incompetent, illogical idiot. Because they see themselves in you. Now, all it takes is for someone to expose this conspiracy. And when the theory about your behavior gets shared and thrown around the internet, until someone in the mainstream media has enough balls, man or woman, to talk about it, then someone else has enough balls, man or woman, to ask you to your face if this is just a giant troll on the Republican Party. Is the Donald Trump theory true? You can turn in triumph. Take back dignity and respect and answer.
You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
What is the most important thing in your life?
I think, generally speaking, family. I think that I think it's very important. Stability. I like to say continued economic success. You would always say the most important thing would be health for yourself and the people around you and the people that you love, because that's ultimately the most important thing.
1 Minute History with Cassanaya on YouTube and the podcast can only be heard if you share this with your friends, post it, and talk about it with others. You can support 1 Minute History for free on Patreon, and for those of you who have supported, we thank you. Next week, we are going to talk about the Fine brothers and how they think they own reactions. Thank you for listening to 1 Minute History. My name is Cassanaya. Good night, and have a pleasant tomorrow.